So what's going on guys, Kate is here and welcome back to a brand new video. For today I will show you the best BARD DPS build in Lost Ark. So in this guide I will show you what abilities and awakening skill you want to get. Then I will explain what are the best engravings, gems and cards to use for endgame content. And then lastly I will show you the best gameplay and even which stats you need to allocate for PVE. So you would be able to get the best results and highest damage possible and much more. So no matter how low or high level or gear score your character is, you can easily use this build and follow the step-by-step guide. So if this sounds interesting to you, then let's get right into it. So BARD is a purely support class for groups and is a highly requested role for endgame content. While her huge AoE clearing skills are up to par with other classes, she lacks any high single target damage. However, this does not mean that she is incapable of doing damage, because she has good amount of AoE damage skills available from the start to speed up the leveling and dungeon farming process. And of course, remember to group up your enemies before using AoE skills for the best efficiency possible. So then for our endgame build, we will be using the preemptive strike engraving, which when attacking monsters with full HP will give us a guaranteed crit with plus 160% damage and much more. So if you are looking for the best DPS BARD build for leveling, raiding, chaos dungeons or any other PvE content build, then this is the one for you. Okay, so now let's move over to the build itself, and these are the skills you want to have. So for the first ability we have the sound shock, and this time we use just 4 levels to unlock the maintained explosion. Then for your gems you want to get both types, so one for cooldown reduction and the second one for damage increase. And then lastly for your rune you want to get the quick recharge. Then for the second ability we have the dissonance, and we use 10 levels to select the melody increase, law of the jungle and harmony enhancement. Then for your gems you want to get the cooldown reduction gem, and then lastly for your rune you want to get the bleed. Then for the next one we have the prelude of storm ability, and we use this time just 4 levels to unlock the law of the jungle. Then for your gems you want to get the cooldown reduction gem, and then lastly for your rune you want to get the wealth. Then for the fourth ability we have the stigma, and we use 10 levels to select the sustain enhancement, brilliant stigma and pain brand. Then for your gems you want to get the cooldown reduction gem, and then lastly for your rune you want to get the gale wind. Then for the next one we have the sound holic skill, and we use 10 more levels to unlock the sound concentration, sustain enhancement and focus fire. Then for your gems you want to get both types, so one for cooldown reduction and the other one for damage increase. And then lastly for your rune you want to get the protection. So then for one of the last abilities we have the heavenly tune, and this time we use just 4 levels to select the quick preparation. Then for your gems you want to get the cooldown reduction gem, and then lastly for your rune you want to get the focus. Then for the 7th ability we have the sonic vibration, and we use 10 levels to unlock the protective vibration, chain vibration and spreading vibration. Then for your gems you want to get the cooldown reduction gem, and then lastly for your rune you want to get the protection. And then for the last and final ability we have the prelude of death, and we use our last 10 levels to select the passionate applause, death amplification and area of death. Then for your gems you want to get both types, so one for cooldown reduction and the second one for damage increase. And then lastly for your rune you want to get the gale wind. Then as well after level 50 for your awakening skill you want to get the oratorio. But if you haven't reached level 50 yet, then here's a specific guide on which abilities you should upgrade first while leveling with the BARD. And then on top of all this, focus on equipping as high item level gear as you can. And then at the end game you should have 350 specialization and 1250 swiftness. But again, if you haven't reached this point yet, then try to have around 80% stats into swiftness and 20% stats into specialization. Okay, so then the way I would recommend to upgrade this build is at level 50, you will get around 250 points. So here's how your build should look like. But then by doing more and more endgame content you will get more points. And at the absolute endgame, this is how your build should look like with all the 408 skill points. So at the start you use the 252 point build, and then by leveling up and completing quests you will get more points. So just keep on improving your skills and getting higher tier runes and gems as well. So then let's move over to the engravings, and you want to get the awakening. This is one of the most useful and important engravings that will reduce the cooldown of your awakening skill by 50%. So this will let you use the oratory skill a lot more often, which will give you more damage and apply a minus 12% crit rate resistance on the enemy target. So then the second engraving is called the preemptive strike. and this is one of the best engravings as a support class that will help you clear big monster groups very fast for a DPS build. This engraving will give us the ability to attack monsters with full HP, which will give us a guaranteed crit with plus 160% damage and much more. Then the next one is called the Max MP Increase, and this engraving is useful for high swiftness builds. Because we have high swiftness, our cooldowns get reduced, so this can lead to mana issues in the future. Those players who don't use this engraving might find themselves running low on mana without consuming regen food buffs and etc. Then for the fourth engraving, you want to get the heavy armor, and this offers a lot of defensives for the BARD, which is one of the squishiest classes in the game. It is a powerful engraving that bards commonly take as their third or fourth option. Then the next one is called the Grudge, and this is more advanced engraving that is recommended for tier 3 content. This Grudge is the most efficient engraving against mobs, and you will get your damage increased, but in return you will take 20% more damage. So when you get to the very endgame content, which is called the tier 3, then get this engraving, but only for the DPS BARD build. And before using it, get it to at least level 2, because at level 1 this engraving is not that efficient. And then for the last one, we have the Cursed Doll, and this is a significant attack power increase at the cost of 25% healing penalty. The penalty can be offset by paying more attention on dodging red AoV circles and by using healing potions more often. So then in my summary, I would recommend to get the top 3 engravings first and then the bottom 3. And then last but not the least, let's move over to your cards, and you want to get the Armen, Syria, Solas, King Tarwain, Carmen, and Delane Armen. In general, these cards are an endgame system for maximizing your character, so you don't have to get them right away. But these specific cards will optimize your damage output in PVE even more. I did bunch of testing for this build and this was the best and most optimized card set. Okay, so then moving over to the gameplay. And if you have played this class while leveling, you will be very familiar with the skills. So I will just try to give you a short description. So then for the first 2 abilities, we have the Stigma and Dissonance. And these skills are very low cooldown and high damage AoV abilities that can clean up big monster groups very fast. Then for the next 2 abilities, we have the Prelude of Storm and Sonic Vibration, and these are your main 2 stunning skills that will do damage and stun your enemies. So then for the next 2 abilities, we have the Soundholic and Sound Shock, and these are your main high damage single target skills that are usually used for elite mobs or big bosses. Then for one of the last abilities, we have the Heavenly Tune, and this is a powerful attack buff that you should cast whenever available, because it will give you attack speed, mana recovery, and attack power to you and all of your party members. So then for the last ability, we have the Prelude of Death, and this is one of your main damage skills that will inflict bunch of damage and inflict debuff 2 times in a row. And then when the debuff expires, it will cause additional damage to the enemy and much more. Then for the next one, we have a special skill called the Serenade of Courage, which you can activate by pressing the Z key, and this will increase you and your teammates' damage to enemies for 15%. And stay tuned, because later in the video, I will explain how to use this ability to its full potential. And then lastly, our Awakening skill is called the Oratorio, and this ability will do massive amounts of damage while debuffing the enemies for minus 12% crit resistance and much more. Okay, so then let's take a closer look at your best skill rotation, and I will give you 2 options, one for simple AoV mob farming and the second one for when fighting a boss. And as we are playing with the BARD damage build, our playstyle will be fairly simple and straightforward. So the highest damage rotation for mobs is to first of all walk around in a circle close to the mobs to group up them very closely, and then use the Heavenly Tune, then the Dissonance, then Stigma, and then the Prelude of Storm. And if the mobs are still not dead, then finish it off with the Prelude of Death. And then moving over to the second rotation, which is primarily meant for boss fighting. So at the beginning of the fight, you want to use the Heavenly Tune, then the Serenade of Courage, then use the Prelude of Death, and then lastly finish it off with your Awakening skill called the Oratorio. So let's see what we did in the first rotation. But first of all, using the Heavenly Tune, we apply a buff to ourselves that will increase our attack power by 15%, and then we use our highest AoE damage skills. And then moving over to the second rotation, and we basically do the same thing, but this time we use the Heavenly Tune and Serenade of Courage that will increase our damage, and then we use our highest damage skills. So for the DPS BARD, there is no one best way to play this build. The main thing you need to do is rotate between your buffs depending on what type of monsters you are fighting. and then use the rest of your skills in no particular order. And then lastly, like I mentioned at the start, for the best efficiency possible, allow your enemies to group up on top of each other before using your damage skills, and that's about it. So now for my last and final conclusions for this build. Remember to use your low cooldown AoE abilities called the Stigma and Dissonance, because they will do the most of the heavy lifting very fast. Then if you're fighting tankier mobs, don't forget to finish your rotations with the Prelude of Death for the chain explosive damage. And then lastly, if you want to use this Bard build for only solo content, then I recommend for you to watch my previous video on the support Bard build. So just scroll through my channel or click the link in the description and you will find what you're looking for, and that's about it. So I really do appreciate everyone for watching, guys, and I hope you enjoyed it. If you have any suggestions, feedback, or other good Lost Ark PvE classes that you would like to see in the next video, then feel free to leave your comments in the comment section down below. And while you're doing that, please click like, subscribe, and enable that notification bell, so this way you could support the channel and you won't miss any more amazing content from me. With all this said, you have an amazing day and I'll catch you in my next video. So take it easy, peace.
Yo, I ain't here